What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to PlayStation Generation episode 30. My name's Matt, and I'll be your host for today's events. I'm joined, as always, by the love guru himself, Denny. What's up, Denny?
I'm good, man. How's it going? I feel not so much love today, so I'm sorry if I spew some venom.
Well, today you could be the Venom guru. Does that even sound better?
I don't know. We'll stick
I
with
don't know.
love guru. Just
We'll
your mileage may vary.
And this week, I'm super stoked to be welcoming to the show Mr. Kenneth Shepard from Kotaku. We're going to be talking a whole bunch of stuff. But Ken, thanks for joining us, man. It's awesome to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I now that you're both on the screen and I'm like looking at y'all, like I was remarking earlier about how I just moved into a new place. I haven't really vetted the background of my video setup, but we have Sly here, so like it's thematically appropriate. I'm gonna cover the Pokemon as best I can, so we're not crossing streams and shit.
It's okay. We cross streams all the time here. Nothing to worry about.
That's basically what we do here. That's only the only thing we do.
All we do is cross streams all day. But Ken, we're stoked to have you here. On this week's show, we'll be talking about Dragon Age. We're going to be talking about Concord. We're going to be talking about this month's PlayStation Plus and a whole bunch more. But before we do all that, we got to kick things off with talking about what we've been playing lately. And Ken, I'm going to kick things off with you this week. What's been keeping your attention, my friend?
Oh shit! Well, I mean, can I swear on this podcast?
You're good.
I forget to ask that before I get on shows a lot, and then like midway through, I'll get a DM like, "Hey, cut it out," and I'm like,
"Nah, we're good."
This is my natural way of speaking, and it's a potty mouth. Well, so I mean, as I guess it's like the topic of the show. Like I've been playing a lot of Dragon Age: The Veilguard, which I was literally playing just before we got back on this call, and that game has occupied my past couple weeks at this point. It's out tonight, basically, wherever you are. And that game I could write a whole novel on in terms of like how I feel about it, how I feel about that studio. And it brought me back to that series in a way that I did not think was possible, because I had been very cynical and jaded towards it as of late. Because other than Kotaku, I also host a book club style podcast called Normandy FM, where we did a year-long season of playing all of those games and kind of diving into every little bit of minutia. And I kind of left that season of that show probably the coldest I'd ever been on anything that we've done for that show at this point. And so it had a lot to live up to for me. Well, say it had to live up to anything that implied that I was still like a fan of those games, really. It had a lot to prove, I guess is a better way to put it. And I think both in terms of like in a microcosm for the series, but also broadly, like I think BioWare is had not carried the same prestige that it had for a very long time.
Yeah.
And it's been divisive for a lot of people, but for me personally, I think for like the sickos out there, I think it's actually gonna be a crowd pleaser for a lot of people, and it certainly addressed problems that I had been having with the franchise for a while. So
I'm gonna pull up your review here just because I want to highlight it, folks. Make sure you go check it out over on Kotaku. Ken's review is fantastic. There's plenty to dive in here, and so I want to kind of touch on a few things that you mentioned there, because that was the narrative coming in to this game. Was BioWare has been dead. You know, their games haven't been hitting for over a decade, and it seems to be for a lot of people, regardless of how divisive the game is, because I feel like some people will never be happy regardless of what they're given. It seems like people are happy with the game in its current form and that they're back. What do you think BioWare's done here that kind of warrants that BioWare is back narrative that's been running around?
I think it's mostly been getting like back to basics and back to focusing on what the studio actually does well, as opposed to, because like even Inquisition 10 years ago, like, which was at the moment like very well received, like one Game of the Year, Game of the Awards, I think. Like I think there's been a lot of partially revisionist history, but I also think just kind of people cooled on it over the years, because it was a lot of open world nonsense. It was a lot of collectathon. It was a lot of like weird live service things where like you had to wait like real world time to finish a quest line. And Mass Effect Andromeda did a lot of similar stuff, and Anthem was just like full like foot on the gas for live service. And so I think a lot of people just kind of waiting for BioWare to kind of actually focus on what it does well instead of what the industry as a whole might make them feel a pressure to do. And that's obviously like a very nuanced conversation, because I'm sure a lot of people are having conversations within that company, both like on the publishing and the development side, about like what they need their next game to be. And so I think there've been a lot of reports about this game, Dragon Age, the game that would be Dragon Age: The Veilguard, kind of like going through a lot of iteration. Like there was a report that it was at one point also going to be like a multiplayer live service game along the lines of Anthem, and they've kind of just gone back to something that feels very evocative of their 360 era games, which I think what I want, is certainly what I think a lot of people are going to want. I mean, some people are probably going to be mad that it's really skewed very far away from the like the tactical roots of that series, because like Dragon Age Origins was like a very much kind of a classic CRPG sort of deal that was visually, tonally different than the Veilguard is. And so I think there's going to be a lot of division even within like the diehards about like, is this really a Dragon Age game? Is this really what we're wanting? And that's their problem. That they can argue about that till they're blue in the face, because I'm just kind of glad to have something that feels evocative of the era of the studio that I fell in love with. I've been playing their games like even prior to things like Mass Effect and the original Dragon Age Origins. But it wasn't until that era that like I was like, oh, this really feels like it's speaking more to my sensibilities in games. And so to have something that feels like a marriage of Dragon Age and also, frankly, Mass Effect is kind of exactly what I wanted from the studio.
So then how do you feel about the combat? Because I feel like, again, you mentioned, you kind of touched on them straying away from the more tactical, strategical side of their things. The combat is the thing that I think is drawing me the most to this game, because I tried to get into Inquisition, and the almost MMO style like combat at the time didn't resonate with me, and I ended up putting it down quite quickly. So seeing how things have changed is actually what's kind of pulling me in and making me interested. How does it feel to actually play?
I mean, it basically feels like Fantasy Mass Effect in a lot of ways. A lot of the systems of like how you command your party and how you're like the entire loop of a combat encounter in that game is kind of like one character sets something up, another character knocks it down, and then you kind of like go in and clean house. And that I can see it being not even just like the shift from action from tactical to action being a problem. I feel like some people will probably be upset about how like, okay, you don't command you don't take control of your party members like you did before. A lot of it is very fast paced. It's very I wouldn't say it's like style over substance, but like it's very flashy. It's just not tactical in the same way. But again, like as a person, I think like I gravitate towards Mass Effect more either way. It's like to feel something that feels like a very polished version of that. I think again, like speaks to what I want, but again, that's going to be reasons it's divisive. But as like far as in a vacuum, like without all the baggage, I think it's like just a really solid action RPG, like with a lot of like interesting strategic elements that maybe don't come across when you're just watching it. I think there's like a lot that happens kind of under the hood, a lot that happens in the build crafting and understanding the synergies between your party members, even if you are not taking direct control of them as you used to. So I think like if you've got the patience and the open-mindedness, I guess, to try something new, like a lot of that depth is still there. It's just kind of something that is not something that you pause and get like a overhead view of and then make your decisions. Like it's very meant to be like real time. So yeah, like as an action game, as an action RPG, I think it's actually really solid, and I hope that BioWare gets the credit for that, because I feel like, frankly, even in the past like decade of them having these flubs of Andromeda and Anthem, I feel like we were rightfully dunking on them for so many things. I think that it's easy to lose sight that like as of the past decade, BioWare's actually gotten really strong at just like action systems. Because Anthem has all its problems, but like that game feels good to play. Like that.
That's what I was about to say. It's Anthem, like everything else aside, flying around, shooting, the actual act of playing the game was not the issue with it, right? Like it felt really good to play. So I'm happy to hear that that kind of Dragon Age carries that DNA forward, at least a little bit in part. Denny, do you have any questions you want to throw Ken's way before I keep my barrage going?
No, it's I'm just excited to hear about it. Dragon Age, honestly, this game has kind of flown under my radar. So I haven't really even seen much of it. I think I've only seen kind of one gameplay preview that came through, I think, the State of Play. But you know what? I own a couple of them on Steam. So You know what? I'm glad to hear it. And, I'm always up for, more games coming out that are polished, more games that are coming out that provide a unique experience, or just provide an experience, or even that harkens back to something that feels familiar. And if this is kind of like going back to, like you said, with Mass Effect and kind of just the way those games played, I'm here for it, and I'm just excited to hear more about it right now.
I'm curious to ask, Ken, because for myself, this will be my first Dragon Age.
Mm.
And when I asked like a couple months ago, I put out a thing on Twitter and I was like, is this a good place to start? Where should I start? And I had like every answer under the, coming out from under the sun. Some people were saying Origin, some people were saying go back to Inquisition, some people were saying wait for this one. How is this one for a newcomer to the series?
That is a much more loaded question than you probably realize. Like even like especially like after playing it, because like I could have given you an answer, a couple months ago, and I feel like my answer now, obviously informed by playing it, is so much more complicated. I do think my most honest recommendation is I do think that it is worth going back and playing all of these games.
Okay.
I think for me, when somebody asks like, "Oh, can I jump in?" and the new thing, like, I think comprehension is like the baseline that you should worry about. But like, are you actually going to give a shit? It's a bigger question, because I think the game does a lot in like there's a clarity to its writing that I think is meant for people that are coming in brand new to kind of like. I was talking to John Epler, the creative director, at the preview event last month, and he was talking about how there's a lot of proper nouns in this game, and it's a lot of writing the dialogue is trying to find ways to always follow up the proper noun with some sort of like descriptive language. So, like for example, you're fighting the elven gods in this game that are broadly called the Evanurus, and so, for example, a character in dialogue will be like, "Oh, we need to stop the Evanurus," the elven gods. Like if something about a line is delivered to where like it kind of always pairs the lore with just like the layman's descriptor.
Gotcha.
And so like if your main concern is just like, am I gonna know what the hell is going on? More or less, you probably would. But I don't think it's. I feel like if you go into the Veilguard with zero knowledge, I think you're playing a worse game on purpose.
Okay.
So I do think though, like for the simplest thing to do, I think is, and what I think should frankly just be required reading, is I do read or watch a summary of Inquisition specifically.
Okay.
Because that is the most tied to this game. It is. There's even been a bit of controversy about how the series has typically had like choice import, like through reading save files, or Inquisition had like a whole external app called the Keep that you would literally go through and just like pick every single choice you made throughout the entire game. Like, the real sicko shit. Like I love that. That was for me. But the Veilguard only asks for 3 choices, but it lets you recreate your Inquisition character, and those 3 choices are mainly there to flavor a few parts of their personality and worldview more than it is about like, how did you handle a war on the other side of the universe? Which is, I have conflicting feelings on, because I think, not to get on my soapbox about something, but like I am a person who I would rather my old choices just not get contradicted more than I care about like them being represented. Like I don't need a bunch of references to shit that I did, as long as you're not like writing in ways that make it feel like I wasn't even there. And I think, to BioWare's credit, they were pretty thorough in not doing that. And so I think those 3 questions were enough to fill out a few things, so long as they were like meticulously writing around like the big shit, the big world changing shit. So yeah, my short answer, at least like read a summary or watch a summary of Inquisition and its DLC. But I do think it's worth playing all of those games, or at least brushing up on them in one way or another, because they are all like very, very different from each other in a way that is, because like that's part of the thing. Is like, oh, is this a Dragon Age game actually? And I was like, but what is a Dragon Age? It's practically like Final Fantasy now, where it's like, can you really define it in one thing? But yeah.
Okay. And that's the thing, because like for me, I've been using the Steam Deck a lot alongside the PlayStation lately, and I keep looking and being like, is there a way to play these games on Steam Deck? And a lot of the time they're like, it doesn't work. Apparently there's issues with like the controls and stuff. So but maybe there are, I think I have heard of mods and stuff. So maybe this is a time where how do you think it would feel playing Veilguard and then kind of going back? Do you know what I mean? Because like I feel like similarly, Yakuza is one of my all-time favorite franchises. When people ask me where do I start, I'm like, you can really start anywhere, but again, context is going to be lost on you for certain pieces of these characters or how they got to where they are in this current iteration. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think going back is interesting because like the thing is when they all play so differently, it doesn't feel like, because like, when you have the direct comparison to something that feels kind of the same but a little bit, like you play something more that feels a little bit better, but it's still mostly the same systems, and like the muscle memory kicks in for something. That's I think where like going back to something that's older is the hardest.
Right.
But when you have 4 games that barely play like each other, it's kind of like I feel like there's a sort of distance you can get there in terms of it feeling worse to play. But I think Dragon Age Origins feels worse to play just on the merits of it being a game I don't like, as opposed to it being like compared to other things. So I think like more than most franchises, I think that's the kind of thing you could bounce around more, just in terms of like game feel. Narrative, you shouldn't do that. That's that's not a good idea. But in terms of is Dragon Age Origins going to feel bad to play after Veilguard? And it's like Dragon Age Origins would feel bad to play before Veilguard.
So it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. No matter what you're gonna do.
Hey, as long as people swear by that game, I'm just a hater.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to see what I want to do, because the PS5 Pro enhanced stuff is calling me, but at the same time, I'm the same way. I like to experience the entirety of a thing to really get in and understand it, but I don't know. There's going to be some tough decisions being made. I think my final question for you on the topic of Dragon Age is it your game of the year thus far?
It could be.
It could be. Okay.
It could be. It's either it or Metaphor right now. And they are both like, very recent. So I feel like I still need like weeks or so to ponder that. But I do think it, like, in spite of all my issues with Dragon Age as a franchise, like BioWare's games hit on, I think, the things that I like most about the medium, frankly. In terms of like role playing and like inserting myself into a world and like really get invested in like creating a character and projecting a part of myself into something. So I think like the experience of the Veilguard is probably my game of the year. I just don't know if the game itself is yet. That's fair to be determined. If that makes sense. If that makes sense.
I mean, so it's in the conversation. There could be an argument made, right? And I think that's cool. I'm excited to dive in, and I'm excited to kind of experience the franchise a little more. And I'm happy that it hit for you, because I know how much BioWare as a whole, especially Mass Effect, mean to you. So it's nice to see that this resonated with you, and I'm stoked to hear that. Let us know, folks, in the comments. You're going to be hopping in, because I'm curious. Let's kind of continue the conversation going. Denny, I'm going to jump over to you. What's been keeping you busy lately?
Well, I finished the Shadow portion of Shadow Generations, or Sonic and Shadow Generations. So
nice. And thoughts?
Well, I have no reason to live now. No, I've hopped back into Ghosts of Tsushima and God of War Ragnarok, so a little bit more on the Ragnarok side, because I found a new thing about me, which is great. When you load up a game in PS5 and you pop it, like you hover the game in the welcome hub, and it shows you just the percentage of how much you've done so far. I've clocked in about almost 20 hours into God of War, and the thing is telling me I'm like 28%. And that can't be right. And it's annoying me and frustrating me, because I feel like I should be like, the amount of shit I've done in that game, I should be farther. I feel like I should be farther in the story, and I'm not. And it's actually very frustrating to the point where like now I'm playing this game out of spite. Like, I want to finish this game so flipping bad. Like, just give me the trophy. I don't want to do the rest of the extra stuff. Just give me the trophy that says I did the thing and the story is done. I just want that. That's all I want, right?
I feel you. I'm curious to see how far you actually are, because I feel like that timer jumps in chunks. It's not like 28, then 29, then 30. You'll go from like 28 to like 47.
That's true.
So it may be that you're in this kind of weird in between. But But yeah, well, I'm glad you're still enjoying both. How did you find Shadow section?
It was interesting. It is definitely messy. I know we talked about this last week where the overworld was kind of like, I think you used the phrase like spaghetti-y. I didn't mind it. I liked it. I can understand like getting lost in it easily, especially the first little while, and like you really have to like play around and just explore to get yourself more familiar with it. The stages were great. Oh my god, the stages were so much fun. I just I'm left wanting more, which is I guess a good thing.
That's good. I know you're again massive Sonic fan, so I'm glad that hit for you. Like like I said last week, I think the levels are fantastic. I think the hub is one of the worst hubs I've seen all year. Like it's up there with it's up there with like 1,000 extra assists for just being a bloody mess to try and navigate through.
Hold on a second. Hold on.
Yeah, oh my god, you've got one! I'm so jealous. I want
one. So are we talking shit about Shadow Generations possible game of the year contender?
I like him. Can we keep him?
I'm telling you, I knew what I was doing when Kenneth was coming on.
I actually really like the open world section of that game because like I don't like open world bullshit broadly, but the one thing that will get me to actually invest in it and like do the collectathon nonsense is when it's the actual traversal of it does not suck ass. So when you've got a super fast hedgehog who can run around very quickly and jump around and hit bouncers that send him to the other side and grind on rails that get you in these cool loop-de-loops. That's like all I need to actually be able to stand.
You know,
open
as
world
you
nonsense.
say this, I'm starting to wonder if Matt knows how to Sonic.
Listen, I know how to Sonic. Okay, I know how to Sonic. I am a staunch Sonic Frontiers defender. I love that game.
That was
and again, I had a blast with that open world. I just think Shadows, I don't mind the size. I don't think the layering of it makes inherent sense. There are things I jump on a rail and I never know where I'm going to end up. I never know where I'm going with.
That's the fun of it.
That's what I was going to say.
Adventure.
It bugged me deeply. I loved the story. I loved the layer, like the levels, the open world. For me, I was just kind of like, I want to go over there. At one point, I had forgotten, and this is like later game, slight spoilers, but there's an area underground, and I forgot how to get there, and it took me probably 25 minutes to figure out how to get back down there, and I was ready to quit at that point because I was just like, my brain's been a mess the last little while, and I was like, how did I get down there in the first place? What did I do? And I spent 25 minutes running around that world being like, I have no clue. I don't know how to do it.
Skill issue.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe I'm just bad. I'm bad at Shadow.
No, I mean like because I was playing it for review as well. So like there were a lot of all the collectibles I could not find that I had to have guides to find. So a lot of it was me just like searching every nook and cranny in that thing. And I spent like over 20 hours in that game. Just like
the Shadow portion
doing levels. Yeah, on the Shadow portion alone. Like oh my god, I could it was torturous to go back to the Sonic section after playing Shadow for that long because that game does not feel as good. Like we were saying, if I had maybe played it first when in the remastered package, might have been able to tolerate it more.
Yeah,
but yeah, just like in terms of like replaying levels, trying to find all the collectibles within the levels and also within all the challenge levels, and then all the stuff, and then all the stuff that's actually in the open world. Yeah, I spent like 20 hours in the game.
Amazing.
Loved every fucking minute of it. That was one of those things where like the second one was over, I was like, I was devastated. No reason to live. Except for Sonic 3. Sonic 3 is coming in
Less
than 2 months.
So I've got
something to live for.
Oh
and
my god.
And we're also gonna get the level pack with Keanu, which is never a bad thing. So let's actually bring in a new story. Because Sonic X Shadow Generation sells 1 million units on launch day. Sega reveals this is coming from Ryan
Deserved.
over at IG.
100%.
Sonic X Shadow has already sold 1 million units, Sega has announced, despite only coming out today on October 25th. Monster sales on a day one, and like this is a conversation that we were having last week. But with Metaphor, with Dragon Ball, with Sonic X Shadow, all of these are just hitting right now. Silent Hill, all selling like 1 million plus copies in a very, very short amount of time. I want to know from two Sonic mega fans here, what do you want next? You know what I mean? Sega sees it. They see the Sonic is hitting again. If you had control, if you were Mr. Sega, or Mrs. Sega, and you were like, this is what I want next, because I want adventure. I want more adventure. Like that's my shit. Or give me that remake of Heroes that's rumored to be heading. But what do you guys want? Kenneth, I'll start with you. Where do you want them to go next?
I mean, I want something shadow centric. Okay, I know I can't have them in the starring game. They'll never let me have that again. This was like a once in a lifetime like thing they're ever gonna get me again.
You mean they're never gonna do Shadow the Hedgehog 2?
That would be crazy.
More guns?
Is what that was.
Edge harder? I don't know what the title's gonna be for that.
Edge harder?
Oh, that came. Yeah, that. Oops.
What?
Love it.
No, I think getting back to like that, like you said, the adventure era of like multiple playable characters, like actual concentration on story, even like as nonsensical as some of that stuff got, like there was still like just a vibe to that that I think that they are realizing there's still like a hunger within this fandom for, because like you know the story history of the Flanderization of the Sonic cast is something. If I got on that soapbox, we would never leave the show. But,
I'm here for it. Stand on that stand on that soapbox.
Well, that's the thing. It's like they have this large cast of characters that a lot of people love, but because there was all this negative reception to things like Sonic 06, they were like, okay, we're going to streamline down to back to basics, just Sonic and Tails, and that's pretty much it. And then so they stopped doing these like multiple campaigns, and they stopped doing these like elaborate stories, and yeah, like Shadow Generations is just kind of a tribute to that. And like I said in my review for that, like that game feels like an apology for forgetting that like was a part, like a core part of why people like these games to begin with. So yeah, I think like just getting back to that kind of vibe, that kind of tone of Sonic game is what I want more than anything. And like Frontiers is like pretty close in terms of the vibe. But now just remember that you've got characters that are almost as popular as the blue guy, and I'm a Team Dark stan till I die, and they are like the core of that franchise to me. So yeah, bring them back.
Danny, my dude, what about you? What do you want next?
So I kind of maybe already got what I want through a fan game.
Ooh.
Because I am one of the few people who actually I didn't hate on Sonic 06 as much as everyone else. So I saw what they were trying to do there, and I think just obviously, trying to push out the game for at the time the next generation releases and having it ready for the holiday season. If they had time to perfect that a little bit more, or just work out all the bugs, I think there was something there that could have been really great, because that game was definitely part of that adventure formula, right? You had the hub worlds, you go into those stages, you kind of had multiple campaigns that you could go through. And I think kind of I don't know if you guys know about the fan project that's out there, which is Sonic EO6.
No.
So there's a guy who's been rebuilding this game in the Unity engine and has been like fixing a lot of the bugs, doing some quality of life changes. It's a PC game, it's a free download, and it's really, really, really good. It is, I think, like what everything Sega wanted in their vision of Sonic 06 to be. He brought it to the forefront, and he brought it to be a reality. And honestly, Sega, if someone out there from Sega ever listens to this, hire him, get him to direct the goddamn remake, and like redeem yourself for that, because everybody hates on that game, but it is a gem if you can sit there and be patient with it, and like you can enjoy that game quite thoroughly, because the story there is interesting, the music is fire, the human on hedgehog love could use a little rewriting. But like it's really just sullied by the gameplay. Sorry?
That I would say they should just hug instead.
Yeah, just hug and he'll come back to life.
You could have saved so much trouble for yourself.
Yeah.
You just thought that one through a little bit.
Yeah.
That Silver Sing Song in that game, my favorite Sonic track ever.
Nice.
There you go. Penny wants to bring back Sonic 06. It's one that honestly I never played, but I always wanted to because of the notoriety, and I thought it looked cool leading up to launch. Yeah. I like that kind of Elseworld style Sonic vibe, like an adventure, like an Adventure 2, where it just feels like he's a fish out of water. So I don't know. Maybe I have to give EO6. You said it's called
EO6. I'll send you the link.
Send me the link. Maybe that's what we'll drill down next. As for myself, I have been playing Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered. Shout out to PlayStation for sending over that code. My review is up over on But Why Though. You can go check it out there. Pulled it here just to kind of spotlight it. So go make sure you go check that out. Sitting at like what, an 84 on Metacritic, on OpenCritic, sorry. And I liked it. It's fun to go back to. I think graphically it looks incredible. I think it looks absolutely stunning. Of the work that they've done to kind of redo the lighting and to redo a lot of the foliage and stuff does look really, really good. I think in the wake of Forbidden West, it doesn't feel as good to play, in my opinion. I was missing the reworked melee from Forbidden West. That just feels a little bit clunkier. I was missing the auto pickup, which they brought over some accessibility stuff, and how the auto pickup didn't make the cut, I don't know. The animation for pickups in those games is just long enough to be annoying with how often you're picking stuff up. I turned it on right away in Forbidden West and never looked back. So I was missing that. But I think for $10, if you own the game, if you're looking for a reason to go back, I don't really think you can go wrong. For newer fans, obviously with the price jumping up a little bit kind of sucks, but you can still find physical editions for much cheaper in the wild than just pay the upgrade fee. Not a bad way to go on that front. Ken, have you been able to try it out at all? Is this on your radar at all?
No. I play I like Horizon fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm usually like I get to the end and I'm like, that was good. I'll play the next one, but I've nothing I typically feel a drive to go back to.
Yeah, fair. I'm usually in the same boat when it comes to Horizon. Steve Court and I did a big chat on the channel. We have like almost half an hour long video going in, so go check that out there. But yeah, I think for new fans, this is the definitive way to play it. For big fans of the game who are looking for a reason to go back, you can't go wrong here. For anybody else, it's kind of like, you know exactly what you're getting into. It's a better looking Horizon, for better or for worse. Mileage may vary depending on kind of how you resonate with that. Let's hit a couple quick hits before we kind of dive back into the second major part of the show. And let's kick things off with the PlayStation blog announcing our monthly games for November. This is coming from them directly, written by Adam Michel. We're getting Hot Wheels Unleashed 2 turbocharged from the PS4 and the PS5, Ghostwire Tokyo on PS5, and Death Note Killer Within on PS4 and PS5. This is launching day one into Plus. I think it's a decent month. I've heard good things about Hot Wheels. I personally am a advocate for Ghostwire Tokyo. While I don't think it's a perfect game, I think it was far too slept on. I think it has really cool art design and interesting story. I think combat is solid. I hope more people check it out because I do think it wasn't given enough attention at the time. This one makes me laugh because it's Among Us, but Death Note. There was rumors of what this game was going to be. We had like kind of heard scuttlebutt around online about about a Death Note game being in the works. And again, coming out day and date on PlayStation Plus. I'm going to pull up the trailer here. While Danny, let's hop over to you. How do you feel about this month? Because I need you guys to watch this trailer if you haven't already.
I'm okay with it. I mean, it seems like I will definitely try Hot Wheels Unleashed too, because I think I tried the original Hot Wheels Unleashed and I had fun for 5 minutes of it. And then I'll definitely give Ghostwire Tokyo a spin. I didn't get a chance to play it before, but I've heard good things about it, so I'm excited to see how that plays.
Kenneth, what about you? How are you feeling about it this month?
So I have a confession. Yeah. I am a PlayStation Plus subscriber of many years. Mm-hmm. I almost never ever redeem the games.
Yes.
And like the main reason being, like I got other shit to play, and by that I mean I'm gonna play Overwatch every fucking night and waste my life away. So that's
priorities.
Why I pay for PlayStation Plus. But my understanding of Death Note is minimal. Like I know the concept of like what the book is, and I know that like the whole premise is he doesn't know the dude's name, so he can't kill him. So like the pitch you just gave does not make sense to me of a Death Note Among Us game. And I don't feel like what I'm seeing in this trailer right now is clearing up any of my questions.
Yeah, you'll get into we get into it in the back half here, but essentially, like you have different roles that these characters play, and there's the good guys that are trying to figure out who the bad guys are, and they're trying to kill everybody. But there's also some like social deduction element to it where you can like talk to NPCs to try and figure it out. I just think that if you had given me like 100 guesses, I never would have landed on this being what the Death Note game is. I was expecting a visual novel in some odd world. I was expecting maybe an arena fighter if they really got weird with it. Never in my life did I see this coming. And I'm morbidly curious because, to be honest, I don't think this looks that great, to be blunt. But I'm gonna try it now that it's on Plus. I need to know what this is.
I mean, I can't blame it not doing well because this kind of makes me think of what was that Dragon Ball game that was kind of like Dead by Daylight, the Breakers or whatever.
The Breakers, yeah.
That didn't do too well either, and it also just kind of, you know, rided the coattails of another popular game. So, I mean, everyone's already probably into Among Us. How many people are really going to shell out? Well, I mean, obviously it's free on PS Plus, but if you had to pay money for it, like how much would you be willing to pay for this game? Honestly,
I wouldn't.
Exactly.
Never doubt the weebs. They will show up.
Yeah, never doubt the weebs. I think that much is true. I think, Denny, we're gonna have to get a game night going, and I think we're gonna have to play this Death Note game when it hits.
I will download it just for that.
I am morbidly curious as to what this is. Let's round out the show with our other major story that broke just a few days ago, yesterday actually. Coming from the Sony Interactive site, we got an update from PlayStation Studios. This is from an email from Herman Hulst. Basically going on to confirm that Neon Koi and developers of Concord Firewalk Studios are getting closed. Neon Koi was a mobile developer that I don't know if we ever really saw much from. Obviously, PlayStation announced this big mobile initiative years back that I don't really think ever really bore any fruit. And then, of course, Firewalk. Everybody knows what Concord is at this point. Everybody knows what led, to their demise. But the big question on everybody's mind was, what happens now? Was Concord going to go free to play? Were they going to relaunch it as another paid product but rework the systems? Like what was next? And it seems that PlayStation has made the decision to close it entirely. And I'm just going to pull up Tom Ivan's story from VGC here, because Firewalk dropped a statement as well saying, they're signing off one last time. Basically, I encourage everybody to go check this out because they go through a lot of what the work that they did and the accomplishments that they made. Because while I think Concord wasn't perfect, I think it deserved a lot more than 2 weeks for an opportunity to be something more than it was. I still think the gunplay was solid. I still think that they had some interesting characters. The lore was in my mind something that they could build off of. And the hate train that I think rode this game into the dust was unfortunate. I think they deserved more time to figure it out. This could have been a No Man's Sky in some way, shape, or form down the road if they had given it the opportunity to learn. I think this sucks ass. I think this is a really crappy move to close the studio. But Kenneth, where are you at on this whole mess?
It's it's obviously like very short-sighted and weirdly knee-jerky as it appears from the outside, because like there are a dozen other things you could have done with that many people, like a support studio. Mm-hmm. If you're not going to bring back Concord in any fashion, like you have so many projects in the works that you think that a bunch of people couldn't possibly hop on for some time while you figure out what's actually next. The thing that was like maddening to me about it was in whatever the direct quote was in the announcement. Largely, paraphrasing it was something along the lines of, "Oh, we're going to use this as a learning experience for our continued live service push," and it's like, there's this trend in video games and other industries adjacent of like people watching other companies fail to do a thing, and then being like, "But it might work for us." As I think it's Arrested Development that clip comes from. That's like, "Oh, but it might work for us."
Yeah.
And then like you've seen this catastrophic, very public, very frankly embarrassing mishandling and failure of something, and then you're like, but that was that game's problem. Like there's no other problem in terms of like the market that we're trying to get into, this very oversaturated genre that people are like very established in the game that they play and maybe don't want another one. Maybe they don't want one that's going to be like a console exclusive that has like a very limited like install base that is sequestered from everything else. Maybe they don't want to spend $40 on it. Maybe they don't want to, jump ship from something that they've been investing hundreds to thousands of hours in. But it might work for us if we try again.
Mm-hmm. I think it's awful because the amount of people celebrating this online and like we've seen what's been going on online. A bunch of grifters, a lot of assholes, a lot of real pieces of shit who are out there celebrating the amount of people that are losing their jobs because they're upset that there were pronouns on the characters' profiles. It sucks because they're totally going to look at this and take this as a win, and they have no grounds to do that, but they're going to do so anyway. It's awful that this couldn't have been a success story, or it couldn't have been given the opportunity to be one, to shut people like that up. Instead, like you said, it feels reactionary, and it feels like
2 weeks.
That's what I mean. People kind of wash their hands on this situation, and they're like, we don't want to touch anything to do. These developers were obviously talented, and I think they deserved more room to breathe. But Denny, Jared, where are you at?
I'm kind of sad. I had no investment in the game. I had no interest in the game. I think when it came out, I didn't even think twice about it. I am shocked to see that, after 2 weeks it was taken off. But I had my thoughts about it, like, again, saturated market, trying to pull people away from games that they've invested so much time into, that it's a tough sell, especially when you're asking them to pay full price when some of these games are, free to play, that they're competing with. But I mean, I've said it once and I'll say it again. You've got people here who have put hard work, blood, sweat, tears, probably a couple of sleepless nights to get this out the gate. Giving it 2 weeks is not a lot of time, and then not even being able to have the opportunity to redeem yourself as a developer, especially for probably a project you're very passionate about. It sucks. And part of it is just what could have been done differently, I think, is the best question. And did it have to come down to shutting down a studio? Like, why weren't they able to have a chance to regain themselves?
And it's just it's weird because now the lingering episode that we're going to get from that Amazon series this December 2 is going to feel especially awkward now.
What do you think the odds are they remove that episode?
See, I would really hate that, because then you're just taking away from all the work that those artists and the people working on that show did. I think it's possible. I also think that they might just let it drop and then just like not ever acknowledge it. You know what I mean? Like it'll sit there for the people that watch it, and I don't think they'll ever talk about it. They'll not ever bring any light to it. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know. Do you think we're going to see it?
I don't know. Like, because I mean, my mind immediately goes to, like, when that show drops, is PlayStation gonna like tweet about that episode, or that kind of thing? PlayStation has like what seems like a PlayStation crossover episode that's also in the midst of all those. It's like maybe they just put out like very general like marketing, like, hey, this show has PlayStation characters, and that leaves you you're covering Concord, I guess, in that sentence. But I don't imagine they will ever draw attention to that one specifically, because then they're just opening themselves up to being like, well, that's kind of fucked up that you just tout this out after you just laid off all those people.
Yeah. I think you're spot on. I think they'll be like, you can go see PlayStation properties on Amazon's thing, and I don't think they'll ever make any mention of it outside of that. But our hearts go out to the devs. I hope they land on their feet. I hope that I hope the best for them, because this industry has just been a fucking graveyard the last little while, and I hope that they can land on their feet. All right, folks, let's round out with some questions from the crew outside. Chris Zazer writes in with 2 questions saying, which PlayStation character do you think would give out the best treats, and which PlayStation character would give out the worst treats? Halloween themed. I think for me, I immediately had an answer for worst. Because despite his name, I would not want anything from Sweet Tooth. I don't know what would be in the candy that he would be giving out. I would be that is one situation where I genuinely be looking for razor blades in my chocolate. I would not want anything from Sweet Tooth.
He does have an ice cream truck. Maybe you get ice cream.
I don't want it. That's my point.
I'm just saying.
And in terms of best treats, I don't know. Kat from Gravity Rush. I feel like she'd be like, I feel like she'd give out some good stuff. I don't know. I have nothing to base that off of, just vibes. But Kenneth, what do you think?
Honestly, Aloy was the one that came to my mind for worst, because I just feel like she would be like, I don't fucking know, kid. Take this
Here's a potato.
plant that I found out in the wild. Just like, I feel like Aloy would be just so annoyed that she would take the first edible thing in her proximity and just be like, "Here, bye." That's my answer for worst.
Here's white bread.
Yeah, it's kind of stale, but
yeah,
it's sufficient.
It's also uncooked. You have to cook it.
Yeah, you have to toast it yourself.
For best, I'm gonna go Sunny from Parappa the Rapper.
Nice.
Again, one on vibes.
Yeah, it just has to be. Danny, what about you?
Okay, so I thought about this and I was like, I think Kratos would give the worst treats.
Probably.
Because, like, you know, it's gonna be like a bear paw that he freshly severed, or like one of Medusa's locks and it's a snake. For best, I don't know. I feel like if these people if all these characters live on a block, Astrobot's house would be the one that gives like the full size candy bars.
I think you're right. You might be in danger of them being actual metal,
right?
But
they'd be cool,
they'd be
right?
big.
You'd be like, oh my god, they're giving out the good stuff.
Yeah, exactly,
right.
exactly.
So that's my vibe. I was just like, as soon as I thought, I'm like, yeah, if they were all on a block, that would be the house that I go to because they'd probably have the coolest shit.
Let's hit a couple of spooky questions. Nagachaka writes in saying, what is the best spooky game to play on the PS5 and why is it Resident Evil 2 Remake? And I'm actually going to bring in Sumit Roy's question at Black Wyver, also saying, for someone that doesn't play horror spooky games, what games would you recommend as an introduction to the genre, not to scare them off? # asking for a friend. I think for me, Resident Evil 4 Remake is a fantastic way to go that I think isn't too creepy at all. I'm a giant baby when it comes to the horror games as well. I don't usually wade in. I'm starting Silent Hill 2 now and I'm already terrified. But I think Resident Evil 4 Remake is enough like action movie as it is horror that it's a fun ride. Or Alan Wake 2. Again, it's more like thrillery than it is horror. But that game just took me in entirely. It's not Resident Evil 2 Remake, Nagachaka. I'm sorry. I tried to play that game. I could not do it. Denny, what do you think?
I second that. Resident Evil 2, I would not say that's the one to play on the PS5. Start with 4. 4 is great. I do that, especially as someone who just went and played 2, 3, and 4 in succession for the remakes. Definitely do 4. Rice boy, you're wrong. As for an introduction game, maybe just because I'm feeling like a bit of an asshole today, like I would start them off with, I go totally other way, deep end, and not introduce them into something that's kind of okay, but like, I don't know, go Doki Doki Literature Club, you know?
Oh my god.
It's a cute game. They'll be fine and comfortable, and then when shit gets weird, we'll figure it out then. And that's just, I would do that. I just watch them freak out. Like I said, I'm feeling like a bit of an asshole today. The Love Guru title is not exactly.
It's not hitting today. That's fine.
Not hitting today.
It's good. Kevin, what do you think?
I'm gonna give. So I am also not usually a horror connoisseur, so I'm actually gonna give something that I think is approachable in terms of it not being like a lot of jump scare and like, you know, very tense bullshit. And say, I don't know. Have you all played Slay the Princess?
I keep hearing about it, but I haven't checked it out yet. Like, I keep being told to play it.
Yeah, because the like special edition, like the pristine cut, which is just like kind of like director's cut sort of deal, just came out for everything. So you don't even need to have your PlayStation 5 for it. You can play it anywhere that you fucking want. It's a time loop visual novel that is about, okay, I'm gonna give you all just like the sales picture. So you wake up in the woods and you're told by a narrator who like you can actually communicate with that you need to go into this cabin that's in the woods and then go down to the basement where you will find a princess who will destroy the world if you do not slay her. Okay. And so as you're going down, you can pick up a knife or you cannot pick up the knife and then just go down and talk to her and get a sense. Cause like, that's like a really heavy thing to put on somebody. Like you just expect me to just blindly go stab this woman? That seems suspicious. And so you can go talk to her instead. But then what if she tries to kill you because she's got this strange man coming in to try and maybe kill her?
Sure.
A lot of different possibilities. But one way or another, one of you is going to fucking die before you get out of that cabin. And then it all starts over. You wake up in the woods again. The narrator's telling you, you need to go kill this princess. She's going to destroy the world. But with each subsequent time that you do it, she transforms into some other horrific thing. And then there's like an overarching mystery to why this is all happening that is pretty incredible. So I highly recommend that. I think it's probably the best narrative game of last year, and it just got better. And it's on PlayStation 5.
I keep hearing about it, so I think this is something that I'm gonna have to pick up because I've been really curious about it and I've heard fantastic things. So I think you just sold me on it. Our final question coming from Edward Varnell at the Boss Rush Network at that retro code, saying, I know you'll touch on Firewalk, but if Sony made a different decision for their future, what would you have wanted them to do? Do you think they could have been given Resistance or Killzone or made something out of them? Does this worry you about Jade Raymond's studio? Kenneth, what do you think?
There's two questions. As far as it worrying me about Haven, not on its face because they doubled down on live service in their statement. So I'm like, okay, maybe that means that studio is fine for now. Because we still don't really know much about their game beyond, that initial trailer. But as for what I would rather have done, like, yeah, Killzone and Resistance are like decent kind of like easy answers, I guess, for lack of a better term. Just like, okay, what are the shooters that Sony has in their stable? I'm not particularly thrilled with either of those games, just like baseline. So put them as a support studio for like the time being, and then like allow them to maybe cultivate something new. I don't think I'd want to just like dump them on some other PlayStation franchise for the simplicity of it.
Yeah, I think you're 100% on with Haven. I don't think they're in any danger, at least at this point. You don't bring in somebody like Jade Raymond to just can her studio right away. Like I'm sure they're going to give them room to breathe a little bit. As for what they could have done, I mean, one would hope.
Who could say?
Who could say? Who could say? I also think there might be in less danger because I don't think what they're doing is a live service. I think what they are supposed to be making is like a single player focus. Unless I'm completely talking out of my ass.
I might be getting them mixed up. The studios mixed up then.
I
thought they were.
Time to fact check. Hold on. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Because I thought it was a single player game, but
they did support on Concord?
No, you're right. It is Fair Games. You're all right. I forgot that they were the ones making Fair Games.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well, then we'll see. Yeah, competitive heists.
With a name like that, I think it's gonna just be a fantastic success.
It's gonna be. I guess we're gonna find out.
Maybe half the problem with all these live service bullshit is that they have the worst fucking names you can ever fathom.
Yep. Fair Game, money sign, S. Like, I feel like I wrote it when I was 13. I'm just missing that like other S with like the lines that you used to draw. Remember like 20 years ago?
Oh, yeah.
As for what I would have wanted from them, honestly, I would have wanted them to take the time and develop Concord out with like a single player story. Because I do think what we were seeing, parts of the lore there, what we were seeing of these characters, what we were seeing of the world that they were in. Yes, it was a little bit like Guardians of the Galaxy at home at first look, but I do think that there was something there, and I don't think mechanically with the mechanics of the games was an issue. So I personally would have liked them step away for a couple years. You could have still brought out the multiplayer side, continue working on it, and release it as a quote-unquote full experience with a single player and a multiplayer. And I think they could have, with a bit of time away from the controversy, could have sold it in a different way. Because like Ken said, I wouldn't have been massive on Resistance or Killzone. I think they're both fine. But I would have liked to see them work more within the space that they were obviously passionate about. And kind of turn that into something a little bit different. But Denny, what do you think?
So I know nothing about Fair Games and Haven Studios, but I'm sure they'll be okay as long as they don't put out a horrible game. But I like the idea of making them a support studio. I think that's a good idea until they can think of something or work on a separate IP maybe. And I like the idea, like we've talked about, building out Concord into something different. Or adding something that provides a little extra value, or maybe convinces people to like a single player experience that warrants a $40 price tag. But if that's not going to happen and they just kind of want to cut their losses with them, I'm all up for the support studio role, being able to push out a few extra projects, and then give them the opportunity again, like we said, to redeem themselves and maybe create a new IP or a new project for themselves.
Well said, my dude. Well, that brings us to the end of the show, folks. Thank you so much for the questions. Thank you for tuning in. Ken, my dude, it was awesome having you hang out with us again. Thanks for joining us. Where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on the good site and the bad site at Shepard CDR. You can find my writing over at Kotaku Monday through Friday. Not to plug something that is purchasable, but it would be, I guess, relevant to a PlayStation podcast. On November 25th, a book, The Psychology of the Last of Us, is coming out.
Nice.
That I wrote a chapter for.
Oh, cool.
About the ways in which queer identity manifests in the post-apocalypse. So that if that sounds of interest to you, and also a bunch of essays by people that have like PhDs, and I'm just some guy. That is out in about a month from now. So.
No, 100% go check that out. I mean that sounds awesome. I'll definitely be diving in. And again, thanks for joining us, man. It was awesome having you. I hope you come back and hang with us in the future.
Anytime. I'm around.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. You got to bring that shadow chain too. It's gangster.
It's too cold.
I love it.
It is too cold. Denny, my dude, where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram, on Twitch, and on YouTube. Everything's in my Linktree, so Linktree/DeNiroKun Gaming. Also, because Rice is not here, you can also find us on Power Up Gamers, where we do a couple of additional topics and chats. So head over there, say hi. It's all on YouTube.
There you go. Make sure you go check Denny out in all the spots. And Jake, yeah, you did come too late. I hope it's because you were running Astrobot back and beating my time on the latest challenge, because I caught up to you, my dude. So get working. And of course, you can find me over here on Console Creatures each and every day. You can find us here, my writing over here, and on butwhythough.net. Please go check out the site. It's full of fantastic work done by incredibly talented people. And similar to Ken, I'm just kind of there trying to do my part. So make sure you go check out a whole suite of incredible folks doing the work over there. Yeah, that brings us to the end of the show, folks. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, be well, and we'll be back next week. Happy Halloween, folks. We'll see you then. Peace.
All right. See you guys later.